Hey everyone, Cameron here and welcome back to the Martial Arts Flexibility channel. We're here again on behalf of BeyondGrappling for our Mobility Month, and today, as I promised last time, we're going to get into an exercise that's going to help you develop your lower body flexibility. And today it is the long lunge. Now, just before we get into it, I think that everyone who trains martial arts should have the splits as their primary flexibility goal. And so that means, your front splits and then your side or your straddle splits as your goal. And the reason I say this is that simply training for the attributes is going to give you the splits. It's going to solve a lot of your flexibility goals. You're going to move better, you're going to feel freer in your adductors, your groin, your hamstrings, your hip flexors, your quads. Everything's going to move a little better, be a little easier with that range. And with the types of exercises we're talking about here, you're also going to have strength in those ranges, which, as I spoke about last week, is a key component of any type of flexibility that you develop, especially when it comes to martial arts. So, let's get into it. Today, we're talking about the long lunge, and here's how it goes. So, the first thing we've got with our long lunge is simply the lunge. Now, this might look familiar. It's kind of similar to a front stance in martial arts, kind of like your bow stance. The only difference here is that we want, and I'll come front onto this, we want our front leg forward, but we want our back foot, instead of being turned out, we're going to bring that around onto the toes, and even erring on the side of pushing that ankle out and not letting it cave in. So out rather than caving in. So we come back sideways, and this is the terrific thing about this exercise, is that it can suit any level. So you're going to start here, and the idea is, as the name suggests, it's a lunge. So we're going to push through our heel this way, keeping that heel pushed out. We're going to push and almost try and straighten that back leg, which I can do now, but once we get lower, I won't be able to straighten the back leg. We want to maintain a neutral spine position, a neutral pelvis. So arching my back and tilting my pelvis is going to take away from that stretch on the hip flexor. So I maintain neutral, almost erring on the side of a tuck under, and I'm going to lunge through that front leg. And the beautiful thing here is, as soon as I do that and I'm pushing back, I can already feel it in the front hip flexor here. So that's step one. This is the easiest way to get into it. And like I said, this is your base starting position. And you can go, if you can't get here, just go a little higher. So that'll always dictate how low you can go by how flexible this hip is and how much extension it can get into. So step two is just to go a little lower. But what we're going to do, instead of doing a full lunge, we always want to keep the toes in front of our knee on the front leg. So toes in front of knee, and when we squat, when we kind of lunge down, it's almost like we're going to squat into this front leg. And here's what that looks like. So we take a slightly wider stance, and as you can see, my toes are in front of my knees, neutral spine, slight tuck, and we go down, we're going to squat into that front leg, and then I'm trying to extend that. It might not look like it, but I'm pushing backwards through this heel, and I'm feeling that all the way through my hip flexor here at the front. And that's step two. The third progression is just to get lower and lower, and what that will dictate, or what it will look like, is that front leg bending enough until you can't bend it anymore, and you end up in almost like what looks like a front split, an elevated front split. So we've started here, we're lower again, we're lower again, we're lower again, and then we lift our toes. And so we're in an elevated front split, and that has significant tension here on the hip flexor. And as you can see, each of these positions, it's not passive, I can't relax in here. So I have to use my body to fight gravity, to keep my balance, and to strengthen as we get into deeper and deeper range. So, a couple of things to help out, because that is a hard position to get into. And most of you won't be able to keep your balance at the start or have the strength to go low without some assistance. And that's where our friends come into play. So I've got 2 sticks here. You can use chairs, parallettes, couch at home, anything that's going to give you a bit of assistance. And you don't want to go 100% on these guys, but what it's going to enable you to do is to get here, and you're squatting in, and I'm not using them at the moment, squatting in, but as time goes by, I might need a little of those extra last 10 seconds. I need a little extra assistance. And as we get further and further down, so I'm down here, and this is, you know, I'm not far off the full front split, and I'm holding, not using them all the time, holding, and we eventually build the strength and the range to get down into our front split. But you really, ideally, you'll add these onto the end of a strength session 1 to 2 times a week, aiming between 30 and 60 seconds. And once you build up to 60 seconds, for 1 to 2 sets, feel free to move on to a lower progression. As usual, any questions, comments, feedback, just drop a note below in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer as many of them as I can. And I look forward to seeing you next time.